Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simon Timpley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. Welcome to this special webinar collaboration between our sponsors DNV Business Assurance and IFSQN. And the subject today is cybersecurity for the food and beverage industry. And our guest speaker is Craig Reeds, who I will be introducing you to very shortly. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the webinar system. You've got the chat bar in the side. Just type in there, get to know each other, say hello, tell us where you're calling in from today. And you can use that throughout to put your comments in there and also place your questions. The webinar format is we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation for a period, and then we will follow that up with Q&A with Craig. The webinar is being recorded today, as always. And we'll follow up afterwards to all registrants by email with the slide deck, a copy of the slide deck and the webinar recording as well. Obviously we'll have the Q&A. There's some polls and things to get involved with. So, relax. You're very welcome and enjoy. And at this point, I'd like to introduce you to Craig Reeds from DNV Business Assurance. Good afternoon, actually, Craig, isn't it?
Hi, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. And where are you calling in from today, Craig?
I am in St. Louis, Missouri. Officially, my office is in Houston, Texas, but I work out of my home when I'm not on assignment someplace.
Okay, and the weather there, just for...
A little bit rainy right now.
A little bit rainy. Well, it's nice and sunny in the UK. It's at 7 p.m. here, and it's still lovely and sunny. But any time for a good webinar is good. So let's get the slides up, and I'll join in with the polls and moderate the questions in the sidebar. But I'll hand it over to you now, Craig.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as we said, we're here to talk about cybersecurity in the food and beverage industry. Just to give you an idea about DNV basically we've got 50 cybersecurity people in 27 different countries. We have been in the cybersecurity business basically for about 15 years, using principles that have been developed by the company over the past 150 years. We have a global cybersecurity knowledge, which means, because we have people in 27 different countries, we have a little bit better of an understanding of how cybersecurity relates all around the world. We also understand the operational technology systems and the IT systems of pretty much any organization, and we understand the regulatory requirements and that kind of thing that come into play. So we are basically a third-party independent advisor for all the critical infrastructure industries, including food and beverage, oil and gas, and energy. A little bit about me. I've been in the IT field for over 30 years. I hold a couple of different certifications, and I work with most of the critical infrastructure companies. I am what you would refer to as a ethical hacker, so both of those pictures can be considered me. The one on the right, of course, being my evil alter ego. But anyway, so let's look at cybersecurity, and we've got these are three quotes that I really like. The last one is the scary one, that the threat is advancing quicker than we can keep up with, and that the threats change faster than our ideas of risk. I'd like to think that we're keeping up with things, but every time I think I've seen everything, some hacker comes up with something that I never considered before. So we have to continually rethink the way that we look at cybersecurity risk and what is at risk. So some of the breaches that have happened, here we see the breaches that have happened since 2006. They continue to go up. Some notable hacks in the food and beverage industry in 2017, 2018 are there. And, I hear a lot of people say, I don't have anything a hacker wants. You do. They want your money, they want your data, and they want any secrets you've got. Anything that's of value to you is of value to them. So just a quick poll question here. Have any of your companies experienced any sort of a cyber attack, data breaches, ransomware, etc.?
Yep. I've loaded the poll in the sidebar. Just to reiterate, has your company experienced any sort of cyber attack? And that could be a data breach, ransomware, etc. Yes or no? And thankfully it's settling out about 70-30. No, 70% no. Yes, 26%, 28-7. Oh dear. 70-30. So the majority have not. Just for a matter of interest, those that have, just type in the comments what it was briefly in a word or two, and we can pick that up later.
Right.
But yes, that's it. That's it, Craig. 70-30.
Great. Well, that's a lot better numbers than I thought we were going to have. I thought it would be a little bit more on the yes side than it was on the no side, but that's not a bad thing. So.
And sorry, Craig. Cynthia
Sure.
said ransomware.
Right.
Cynthia. And are you covering ransomware, or can you tell us what ransomware is?
Right. Well, ransomware is basically where your data is encrypted by the hacker, and you literally get a ransom demand from them that says, we've encrypted your data. If you pay us this amount of Bitcoin, we will unencrypt that ransomware. We will unencrypt your files for you. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I hope you've got really great backups.
Okay.
So that's really where we see that.
Yeah, and then a couple of people have said, Jeff and Bruce have said phishing with a P.
Right.
James said ransomware. Ransomware and lots of phishing.
Yeah.
They're very common, those types of things, aren't they?
Oh yeah, because when I do a penetration test, if I can do phishing, if I can do social engineering as part of the penetration test, I can usually be in a network in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Because
somebody's going to click on it.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Right. Okay then.
All right.
Move on, Craig.
So we'll move on here. There's various different kinds of hackers that are out there. Everything from amateur hackers to professional ones. And the professional ones can be, like the people who are involved in Anonymous, which is a hacker collective, all the way up to, people who work for governments around the world. It can even include angry or unethical employees, outsourced subcontractors, that kind of thing. So, these attacks come from different directions, and some of them you might not even consider a cyber attack, where, say, somebody just steals a customer list and, walks out the door with it, and sells it to the competitors for $10,000 or whatever. So, which I've seen happen. But okay, so how bad is it? Well, the manufacturing industry is now the second most hacked industry, with healthcare being the first. So if we look at some of the hacks that have happened, there was the Chili's data breach. The chain's parent company, Brinker International, announced on May 11th of 2018 that a data incident, I love the term that they use, data incident, at Chili's restaurant had resulted in credit and debit card data breaches. The breach actually occurred between March and April of 2018 and was not discovered until May. As they investigated the breach, they discovered that malware had been introduced into the system and was used to gather payment card information, which included credit and debit card numbers as well as the name of the cardholder. The funny part of all of this for me is that on the company's website, they say that Chili's is a technology pioneer leading the industry in the creation of digital guest experience. So in 2013, Chili's began rolling out tablets at the table in their restaurants, allowing customers to browse the menu and pay their bills. Every Chili's restaurant table, numbering more than 70,000 tables, now have these tablets on them. And also, according to their website, Chili's approach to technology innovation is simple: build an infrastructure and keep the digital guest experience at its core. So Chili's is not the only restaurant that has suffered data breaches lately. Panera Bread recently acknowledged that data belonging to some of their customers were vulnerable on the website for at least 8 months. The data included names, addresses, and the last 4 digits of credit card numbers. Earlier this year, Applebee's found malware on its payment system in 167 locations across 15 states, potentially exposing customer credit card data. So the barrage of data breaches at restaurants and other businesses highlights the heightened risk of identity theft and the continued vulnerability presented by payment systems, databases of customer information, and mobile apps. So that's something that has happened in the restaurant industry and all. But let's think about other things that could go wrong. Say a frozen food distribution facility that a hacker could hack into it and raise the temperatures on the freezers while making the control system read that everything's fine, thereby causing the food to thaw out. And then before anybody notices what's happening, they refreeze the food. The warehouse has no idea that this has happened. The food gets distributed to grocery stores, and thousands of people get sick from eating it. The hack would turn out to destroy company reputations. For D&V, the simplest terms for the solution is people, processes, and technology. Employees need to be trained on what could happen and how to avoid becoming victims of phishing attacks and other social engineering hacker attacks that are there to trick them into clicking on a link, opening attachment, or responding to a request to transfer funds. So what's making all of this more difficult is that hackers are using what we've taught in the past against us. We've always told users that if they receive an email with an unexpected attachment, that they should call the sender and verify the attachment. The problem is what if every email they receive from a certain vendor always have attachments on them? Then they're expecting that from that vendor. So then we move on to policies and procedures. that need to be developed and put in place around continuous cybersecurity training for all the users. A lot of companies do it once a year. October is Cybersecurity Month, so let's do our cybersecurity training in October and then not talk about it again for 12 more months. That doesn't work. We need to have continuous training and reminding of employees. Also, the installation of security patches for both operating systems and applications, as well as policies around physical security of the network assets. If computers aren't physically secure, they can never be cyber secure. So we look at the policies and procedures, the technologies in place, and the people and how they're trained. So how do companies protect themselves? Well, you start off by doing an inventory of what is connected to your network. You can't expect to defend devices on your network that you don't know are there. So you need to be sure that when you perform this inventory, that you include any device that connects to the network. Think of, you got to think past the routers and the switches and the PCs and the laptops and the printers. What's connecting to your wireless network? Is your security system or your HVAC system connected to the network? When Target got hacked last year, it was through their HVAC system that they got hacked. So creating a network device inventory can be difficult, but there are tools that are available to make it easier. And once you have created the initial inventory, which becomes your baseline, you go back at least monthly to look for new devices or devices that are no longer connected to the network so that you can update that inventory. So then the next thing would be determining what's running on your network and on those on the devices. So in the first step, you inventoried the hardware. Now you need to inventory the software and what's running on each device. And once again, there's multiple tools for doing this. The quickest way to complete both of these steps is to use Nessus or some other software like that, where you can scan both the hardware and the software that's on those devices. Then we move into the principle of least privilege. This is a very valuable cybersecurity concept. Never give a user or a device more rights on the network than they or it need to perform their assigned tasks. Privileges are assigned based on roles or job functions. If a user is unable to download and install applications on their PC or laptop, you reduce the chance of a device becoming compromised. Many hackers, once in the network, move laterally through the network from machine to machine, looking for information or vulnerabilities that can be used to give themselves more abilities on the network. If a hacker were to gain access to a user account or a system with low privileges, it decreases the amount of damage that they can do. You basically have the opportunity to trap them in a place where they can't get to what they're looking for. Excuse me. And then we need to set up policies and procedures for applying security patches. So new vulnerabilities are discovered every day. And when the vulnerabilities are found, vendors release updates or patches to mitigate the vulnerability. Exploiting vulnerabilities is what a hacker lives for. An unpatched vulnerability can be almost an open door for a hacker to get into your computer or your network. It's mind-boggling to hear that some organization was hit with a ransomware attack because they didn't load a security patch that was released 6 to 12 months ago. When an application reaches end of support, the vendor stops releasing patches, and that should tell you that it's time to upgrade that software to the newest version or find another tool to perform that task. And never use unsupported software on your network. Speaking as an auditor, a fully patched network is impressive. So at DNV, we basically break down the services that we offer into 3 different categories: prepare, protect, and respond. In the prepare area, we're helping companies build cybersecurity policies and procedures. And train their employees on how to follow these policies and procedures. We do incident response planning. What are we going to do when something goes horribly, horribly wrong? And this isn't just what do we do if the server burns up. This is what do we do if the building falls down? How are we going to continue business? Cybersecurity enhancements. So we can come in and help improve the cybersecurity on networks and applications and that kind of thing. And then, of course, cybersecurity awareness training. And this can be everything from just classroom education to simulated phishing attacks, that if the user clicks on something that is that they shouldn't have clicked on, they're taken to a page that educates them on what they did and why it was not the right thing to do and what they might do in the future to avoid that. Then we move on to protect. We perform cyber vulnerability assessments, penetration tests, and we help with due diligence investigation. So if company A is being purchased by company B, we'll go in we can be hired by company B to go in and do a analysis of the cybersecurity at the company being purchased, and then let the purchasing company know if there's any cybersecurity issues that they need to be aware of that may result in litigation later on down the road. And then respond, we come in and we help companies activate and deploy the incident response plan that we wrote earlier, or we'll come in and do cyber forensics afterwards to figure out how somebody got hacked and what was stolen, etc. So the interesting thing is that on average, a data breach in the United States cost the company $7.35 million. This is a 25% increase since 2013. And a basic penetration test, and this is one network, 8 hours worth of time, can be performed for as little as $2,500. So it's interesting to me. It's kind of a pay me now or pay me later type situation that amazes me when companies say, oh, well, we can't afford to do a penetration test. Well, you can't afford $7.35 million either. So I kind of think spending the $2,500 to anywhere from $2,500 to $10,000 for a decent penetration test is worth the money being spent. So that is what we do and how we do it. And what I see as far as the cyber issues in the food and beverage industry. We have questions, comments, complaints?
Okay, thanks for that, Craig. Sure. Do you want to switch your webcam on? Yep. And then we'll, there we go, have a chat. Yeah, great. Yep. Thanks very much for that. And I was talking earlier, with GFSI standards, BRC, SQF, etc. Now there's a lot more, requirements to look at vulnerabilities and threat assessments, and I guess a part of that would be cyber security.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are just an amazing number of things that as far as that cybersecurity goes with the different organizations and how they can be hacked, and
okay,
it's just amazing.
Let me go through the questions then. Tina, firstly, how would you know that you are hacked?
Well, I would say that you see unusual traffic on your network would be one of the first things. If you're monitoring your network, as most companies should, and you see that every day, Frank downloads a meg worth of data to work on, and then all of a sudden Frank's downloading 10 gig worth of data. Yeah, there might be something wrong, and you need to check into that. So it's just kind of looking at the things that are going on your network and looking for things that aren't normal.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Wayne is asking, could a hacker get into the supply chain system and use that info for cargo theft?
Yeah, I don't know about for cargo theft, but the supply chain system is interesting because we've seen some hacks here lately that instead of the hackers going after the actual target company, they went after vendors of that target. Okay, and because what happens is a lot of times you have the vendors are smaller than the actual target company, and they may have, it may be a mom and pop shop, and their cyber, their IT manager is their nephew that's a senior in high school, and he comes over after he finishes work every day and installs new computers for them and stuff, or does their Windows updates or whatever, but they got hacked, and then the vendor got hacked, and then they were able to push the hack from the vendor into the actual target company. Another great example is the Target hack, where they hacked into the HVAC vendor, and then from there hacked into Target.
Right. So. Okay. Mohammed, let's have a look at this one. What do you think we need to advise ISO 27001 to corporate level food companies?
Well, yeah, I think that the ISO 27001 is great standards. Also, here in the United States, NIST, and that kind of thing. But the one thing that I always push is that you can be compliant with ISO 27001, or you can be compliant with any regulations or anything like that, but that still doesn't mean that you're cyber secure. Cybersecurity comes out of policies and procedures and training of your users. So you can have everything in place, but if your IT staff isn't following the procedure of loading security updates, you're not going to be secure.
Yeah. So. And well, I was just thinking then, it's not necessarily somebody from outside. It could be someone from within the organization as well.
Yeah, there's a number of hackers inside of organizations that I am familiar with a gambling casino operation, that their customer service people are constantly offered money if they will print out their customer databases, their customer list, so that these other casinos can convince those people to come and gamble at their casino instead of
yeah. And it's very lucrative. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I can make $10,000 under the table for giving somebody a list of customers Sure.
Mm. But I mean, how would you protect yourself against something like that?
Well, you have to say, does that person need that information? Um, you know, is it, it's strange, how they're, well, they copied that off and they saved it to a thumb drive. Why would they
Mm.
do that? Uh, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they attached it to a Gmail email. Why would they do that?
Mm.
That kind of thing. And so, yeah, in a lot of cases, it's become a lot more difficult with the advent of web-based emails and
Mm.
uh, cloud storage. You have to kind of go, well, why did they download that information in the first place?
Yeah. You tend to forget, don't you? Take it for granted. But once you're connected to the World Wide Web, you're potentially open, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You're right. Let's have a look. Dawn is asking, what's the most common way of hacking?
The most common way, I would say either disgruntled or naive users, or through phishing attacks.
Yeah. And Bruce, seems that what you were referring to was big business response preparedness. What about a very small business, less than 10 people? A lot of small companies. What can they do?
Well, even small companies need to perform the same tasks that the big companies do. I worked for a small family-owned company at one point, and they still followed all the SOX regulations, even though they didn't apply to them. So, that's what I'm saying here is, even though you're 10 people, a penetration test is important. Even though you're 10 people, a incident response plan is important, because you need to know what you're going to do if something goes horribly wrong. So, they can be scaled down to match any size company.
Yeah. And Bill Hanson, are offsite backups a requirement?
Depends on the industry. I prefer that. Even if you're doing old-fashioned tape backups and that kind of thing, I would still move them off-site, just because you never know when the building's going to burn down, and you need to have those backups off-site. So if it's off-site, in the cloud, or off-site in some sort of data storage facility, I do believe that off-site is important.
Okay, good. And Ahmed, I am a GFSI contractor and lots of information on my computer. What is your advice to protect that?
Encrypt your hard drive. That's, encrypt your hard drive, and then if something goes wrong, you lose your computer, it gets stolen or whatever, even if they remove the hard drive and try and plug it into another computer, they're still not going to be able to access it because it's encrypted. So
I've learned something today. I'm going to look that up, actually. Is that a relatively cost-effective and simple thing to do?
Oh yeah, it's extremely simple, and takes a fairly short time to do. So.
Right, good. I'm onto that. Bill, who are the hackers? Organized crime, kids doing it for a challenge outside the country, Chinese, Russians?
Yeah, all of the above. The hackers are kids who don't know anything, but they've gone out to this dark web website that they discovered, and it's got all kinds of hacking tools on it. It's organized crime. It's nation states. It's even people who are just what we refer to as hacktivists. Hackers with a grudge against an industry or something like that, which that's basically what Anonymous is. It's a hacker collective, and they kind of go, hey, we don't think that these people are nice. Let's all hack them. So, there's multiple different faces for hackers. I mean, I'm one, but I'm a
And
good guy.
yeah,
So
you look like a very nice chap as well, Craig. But
yeah.
never trust a book by its cover.
That's
Um,
right. Looks can be deceiving. So
yeah, Mohammed, can the recipes embedded in system for processing be hacked, or the data loggers for process monitoring hacked? Those types of things.
sure they can. I mean, anything that's connected to the internet can be hacked. So if we're talking about an industrial control system and the recipes embedded in that system, yeah, they could be hacked and could be changed or messed with in one way or another. So if it's data and if it's connected to the internet, yeah, it can be hacked.
Okay, and another one from Mohammed. Nowadays, we are moving on preference of using IT applications like Android applications and more use of social media. Seems how to limit it. Any thoughts?
Things going on cybersecurity wise, on your network. They may be giving away too much information. So something to be concerned with.
Rightio. And Irina, she's not familiar with the phishing attack term. Can you describe that with an example or two?
Yeah, phishing attack is basically it's an email attack, and so I send you one of my favorite examples of this is so most all of us are on LinkedIn. Okay, so I have seen a phishing attack that is a fake connection request for LinkedIn. Okay, and we get these in our email, and it says, "Oh, so and so would like to connect with you on LinkedIn." And if you click the, anything on that email, then it takes you to a LinkedIn sign-on page that isn't the real LinkedIn sign-on page. You type in your LinkedIn username and password to log into LinkedIn. Boom, they have your LinkedIn username and password.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can do whatever they want to on LinkedIn. And most likely you use the same one for your email. So now I can hack into your email account, your Gmail or whatever. And then once I'm in there, I have the keys to the kingdom, because then I can go on.
Yeah, to be right before we jumped on this webinar today, I had a fake email from PayPal saying that my account had been limited due to blah, 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 log in and verify my. And I know, obviously, it's fake, but it's so easy for the initiated. It's
right.
very easily to do. If it's from a bank or PayPal or something like that,
right.
and they look, really credible, don't they?
Right, and I think that's the really important thing is that if you get an email from your bank that says, "Oh, click this link and log into your account," no, go to the bank's website and log in the way that you normally do. Don't go clicking on the link that's in that email, because if it was your bank, the same information that they're wanting you to look at is going to be there, when you log in from the website, not just, click on the attachment. So that's what phishing is. I hope that explains it to you.
Okay. One way I verify that, because I've clicked before, if you look in the address bar, it's not the standard domain.
That's changing because I can use when I set up the website address, I can use special characters that look like the letters, but they're not.
Right.
Yeah. And so I can come up with a link that looks like it says bankofamerica.com, but it actually says, it's actually something else. It's not Bank of America. So a lot of times you need to pay attention to if it's HTTPS or an HTTP, that kind of thing. So
Think before you click. Think before you
yes,
click.
definitely.
Wayne Labs, how do you screen customers and suppliers who use your network to be sure that they are not going to trade passwords or other key data?
Well, I think number one, you know, start with a NDA agreement with them, a non-disclosure agreement with them, before they can access your network. Only give them access to the network when they need access to the network, and give them disposable passwords. If a vendor says, "Oh, I need to get into the network and do XYZ," you say, "Okay, you can access the network on Tuesday between 8 and 10, and at 10:01 the password that they use to access the network doesn't work anymore."
Yeah.
So
Good idea. And back to Ahmed, actually. During your presentation, you gave an example of the hackers might play on the refrigeration system. So do the protection systems have the ability to detect hacking?
yes, they do. If you're using an intrusion detection system, or something like that, then you should get alerts that there's strange behavior going on in your network. And then you just see other strange data points and that kind of thing. So you need to be monitoring using some sort of network traffic monitoring to make sure that everything's good.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And Gary Pasco, do you have an opinion on password software such as LastPass? Are you familiar with LastPass?
I assume that's one of the password vaults, and password vaults are great as long as you remember your password to get into it. Other systems that I've seen that basically create passwords for employees so that they don't know what the actual password is to get into the system. Those are great too. You usually have a system administrator, or at least two system administrators, that have either the full or partial master password to get into that.
Yeah.
So.
Has anybody, I've just recently got a new phone, Samsung, and it's got biometrics on there for your eye, and you
Right.
can set up for your thumbprint or whatever. Do you see that coming into more wider use for other, things like this?
Yeah, I do see biometrics. I see a day really when passwords themselves are going to go away, because they really don't secure things as much as we'd like to think they do.
And you don't forget that, do you?
Yeah, so biometrics are going to be big, in doing, uh, in accessing systems and that kind of thing. So hopefully not voice prints though, because.
No. Well, what about Kyriakos is asking, what about VPNs? Are they useful in preventing hackers?
They are to a certain point. Okay, and my feeling is, especially if you're going to be on a public Wi-Fi, like you're at an airport or you're at a restaurant or whatever, and you're using public Wi-Fi, and you're doing anything other than surfing the internet, just recreationally surfing the internet, I would be using a VPN to encrypt that traffic, especially if you're doing business stuff or if you're doing banking stuff on a public Wi-Fi network. Yeah, you need to be on a VPN and encrypting that traffic. As far as, so VPNs are great for encrypting the traffic and everything, but if my computer gets compromised, okay, and some hacker has a backdoor into my computer, when I access that VPN, the hacker has access through the VPN tunnel because they're on my computer. So that's something that needs to be considered. VPNs are great, but if the machine's already compromised, that VPN's just the tunnel for the hacker into your network.
Okie dokie. Arjun, do you think in the future there will be a full-time Craig Reeds or team in food manufacturing service companies?
I think that there should be a cybersecurity team in just about any company. But once again, that doesn't get away from the need for a third-party cybersecurity company to come in. And I akin that to your accounting department. They do internal audits, but every year you bring in PricewaterhouseCoopers or whoever to do an audit of the accounting department. Okay, it's the same thing. You should bring in an outside third party, I don't have a dog in this fight company to do a cyber vulnerability assessment on your network, just because it's best practice.
Certainly the most critical will be that, probably the first one, that baseline one, to see, because you have really, unless you've got real good expertise, you haven't got a clue.
Right.
You know, because I haven't got my hard drive encrypted for a start, and that's basic, I imagine.
Right.
Right. Any more while we've still got Craig here? You can, if you think of something after we end this broadcast, you can always put that in an email, and I'm sure Craig would follow up with that.
I would be more than happy to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've had quite a lot of questions actually, Craig. Yeah. So one piece of advice then, because a lot of the people on here will be food safety managers, you know, quality managers within food, well, the food supply chain, let's say. Some advice that you would give them, what they need to do to perhaps convince upper management that what they need to do.
Right. Well, first off, I just saw something fly by here. Alejandro, can I recommend a cyber company? Yes, DNVGL, Digital Solutions.
Yeah.
I can recommend them very highly.
Well, what we'll do is in the follow-up email, we'll put obviously the presentations there with your contact details, but we'll also put a direct link to the website as well. So
yeah. So, you know, I think, you know, my biggest piece of advice is train your employees. You know, make sure that they know the right things to do, because that's unfortunately the weakest link in most companies is the employees. So cybersecurity is nothing without the employees being educated.
Yeah.
So
great.
All right.
Yeah, and Bill says there, great info, thanks. So yeah, thanks very much for this, Craig. Superb. Okay. So yeah, if anybody has a further question, just email us. And
yeah,
wait a minute before we go. Here we go. Some last minute. Wayne Labs. Video cameras have been notoriously affected and used as bots. Could this happen at a food company's location to disable the video system?
It could, if those cameras are connected to the internet. If they're, you know, if I can access that camera directly via, you know, its IP address, then yeah, I could disrupt the video system just by doing a denial of service attack against the video system, which would essentially shut all the cameras down. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you. And Mohammed, lastly, Mohammed says, if you can refer a best practice cybersecurity standard for food and beverage, or just generally?
If you're in the United States, I would say, well, either NIST or ISO 27001 are probably your best standards. There's also one that you can look at that's a computer or a cybersecurity maturity model called C2M2, and it was created by Carnegie Mellon, and so you can look at that also.
Super. Right, that's it. Let's wrap it up then.
Right.
And yeah, any further questions we'll pass on. We'll follow up with an email. And I really appreciate your time today,
Thank
Craig. Great, different subject, but excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.
Sure.